Happy New Year. It's good to see you. It's been a couple of months, hasn't it? You look terrific out there. Hello, good to see you too. All righty, welcome back, everybody. It's that time of the month here, where there's another great Central Indiana Chapter PMI event, and we've got a really good one here. First, on a bit of a personal note, in the Gargas family, there's a particular phrase that we as parents have tried hard to bestow upon our children, and it's this: it's very important to be aware of your surroundings. And we know this is a really important expression because whenever I play Pokemon Go, there's a message that says exactly that. But when it came to planning tonight's event, the program committee of volunteers were thinking hard about how can we help you as project managers get from where you are to where you want to be in your professional career. And they thought we should do this by helping project managers be better aware of their surroundings. And what are the surroundings of a project manager in the state of Indiana but the business environment? So we searched high and low and found the perfect, best person in the whole wide world to help us learn what's going on inside Indiana business. And we're going to get to him in just a moment. But we can't do that until we get through announcements. I still want a theme song for announcements here. Well, there aren't very many, just 3 this time. If you're a new chapter member or you're newly certified, congratulations. We'd all love to share in your joy of these achievements. So please go into the chat window, introduce yourself if you're new. If you've certified or had some other momentous occasion happen in your life, please share with us in the chat. We'd all love to share and congratulate with you. Hey, we remind you of this periodically. If you are a chapter member, ensure that you are signed up to auto-renew your membership, because you shouldn't be able to go a day without having immediate access to PMBOK. And lastly, as usual, there will be a survey after tonight's event. We value and use your input to plan these types of events. Take you less than 60 seconds to do it, so please go for that. We're also looking for continued involvement in the volunteer base to help with pulling together these programs and other things, because at the end of today's session, we're not doing the usual things. You're going to learn a lot more about PMICIC. I'm going to just leave you with that and hang around at the end, because I'm going to, just a little teaser. This is what I learned from our guest today. You ought to tease the audience with something before you actually put on the show. So I'm going to tease you with that. Hang around the event. I'll let you know at the end what's going on. But it's not the usual stuff. It's something different. And already, let's move along here to, what's coming next. After this slide, it's usually the meat of the content here. Let's go over these things. Disclaimers. Hey, PMI members have ascertained that being basically good people, listed here how that is good for the project management profession. All work that you hear here is the intellectual property of the people that are expressing that, but understand that the views and the thoughts of opinions of people such as today's speaker and even little old me are not necessarily those of PMI or PMICIC. And note that unauthorized reproduction or distribution of copyright material is considered naughty, so just don't go there. And now we are, look at all that text here. Hell, let me summarize this for you. Tonight's special guest speaker almost needs no introduction, but that's not going to prevent me from saying nice things about him nevertheless. Perhaps best known as creator and host of Inside Indiana Business, Gerry Dick has earned several Emmy Awards, been named Sagamore of the Wabash multiple times, which I didn't know was possible, has been awarded Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year, has been recognized by the Small Business Administration as its Journalist of the Year, and he's a member currently of several Central Indiana boards of directors. And he has a Wikipedia page. And I think that means something. Gerry's a frequent keynote speaker, moderator on all things Indiana business. I think you can watch the television show on about 15 Indiana stations, listen to daily radio reports on about 27 stations, and absorb his reporting on demand from email, web, and mobile sources. Gerry, welcome yet again to, if not the stage, the lead microphone of the Central Indiana chapter of the Project Management Institute. Welcome back.
Hey, Rich, thanks. That was a great introduction. Can you see me?
I can see you. Look at that. We can all see you. A little closer now.
Good. Perfect. Hey, thanks very much. A pleasure for me to be here tonight. really been looking forward to this and getting 2022 off on a really positive start.
That's super, Gerry. I was preparing for this, and of course, I was stalking you on the internet with information. And you are so busy. And the first question I have listed for you here is, do you ever sleep?
Well, as I've said many times, others have said it too. Sleep is highly overrated. So I guess I'll leave it. With that answer.
All righty. Well, let's get down to business. Totally pun intended here. I understand that close to you, there's news regarding Inside Indiana Business and IBJ and some tell us about this.
Yeah, 2021, Rich, was a really big year, surprisingly, and we'll talk about that as the presentation goes along. But surprisingly, a really big year for Indiana business in a positive way, despite the pandemic. Closer to home, more personally, a big year for us too. Inside Indiana Business, which I've had on the air on the TV side for 23 years, as a company for 21 years. We were acquired by IBJ Media here in Indianapolis in a deal that I'm very excited about. We retain the Inside Indiana Business brand, our television, radio, and all the different products we have. But by joining IBJ, we're creating an entity that, and for purposes of this group, is really going to enhance, we feel, the coverage of business news in Indiana, here in central Indiana, but also around the state of Indiana as well. So from a video perspective, daily content, a number of things related to Indiana business news. Very excited about the partnership that is getting ready to kick into high gear now as we begin 2022.
As consumers of business news, Gerry, what are some of the sources you would recommend for us? We're going to get into details later, but if we want to keep up to speed and up to date on this on an ongoing basis, what do you recommend?
Well, we've got both the IBJ.com, InsideIndianaBusiness.com. If you're talking about Indiana business news, there really, obviously I'm biased here, but there really aren't any other sources where you're going to get the depth, the coverage, and the breadth of Indiana business news, especially on a statewide basis. Certainly here in central Indiana, that's part of the magic, I think, of this combination is the Indianapolis Business Journal and its 40 plus years of covering Indianapolis and central Indiana. Inside Indiana Business, our 20 plus years of covering Indianapolis, but really covering the entire state of Indiana. A perfect marriage. So with those two websites and all the various products there, I think you're going to get a lot of great information.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Hey, I understand that recently you may have heard kind of an important speech by an important part of our government here in the state of Indiana, which broke some news.
Yeah, well, it really did. And attention is paid to the state of the state each and every time it is given. And a lot of times there's not a lot of great information necessarily or new news that comes out. And there wasn't a huge amount that came out this time, but I thought it was very interesting from perspective on the Indiana economy, where we are, where we've been, and importantly, where we're headed. The governor spent the entire speech essentially touting the Indiana economy. You might find that surprising coming out of the pandemic, or we're still in the pandemic, but hopefully coming out of the pandemic. But the governor talked extensly about low unemployment, a 21-year low on the unemployment side, a budget surplus that is huge. And getting bigger and bigger. A lot of questions about where that money can and should be spent, but it's really a positive to have that big budget surplus and record numbers from the IEDC. And this is the big surprise. Pandemic year 2021, the Indiana Economic Development Corporation reported record numbers in terms of commitments, and that's $8 billion plus in capital investment from companies here in Indiana, expanding companies moving here as well, 30,000 plus job commitments. Now, importantly, these are forward-looking. These haven't happened yet, but they are commitments to add jobs here in Indiana. And an element that came out that I thought was especially interesting from the governor's speech is population. We hear a lot now about talent and the need for Indiana to grow population, to keep people here and to have people move here to fuel this talent pipeline, a real issue for the state of Indiana. The census shows that between 2010 and 2020, Indiana actually gained population, I think about 30,000 residents or so. And importantly, between July 2020, July 2021, that 1 year period, more people moved to Indiana than any other state in the Midwest, 11 states in the Midwest. So while the population in Illinois and Ohio was declining, it was increasing here in Indiana. And I think that's a positive development. Needs to happen. More of that needs to happen, but I think it's very positive. The other piece, and this ties to the population thing, are these, they're called READY grants, or these used to be the Regional Cities Initiative, Regional Economic Development grants, fueled by federal dollars coming into the state. But the state of Indiana at the end of last year handed out $500 million in grants to regions around the state of Indiana for quality of life, quality of place projects. 5 regions got up to $50 million each. It's matched by private sector money in those markets for projects. Give you an example. Here in Indianapolis and central Indiana, a lot of the focus is on leveraging the White River for recreation and quality of life type developments up and down the White River here in Indianapolis and north as well. In Fort Wayne, again, you see a theme here, embracing the rivers. 3 rivers in Fort Wayne. They've got massive multi-million-dollar redevelopment of the riverfront in Fort Wayne. Money will go for that there. In Evansville, quality of life projects, again, at the top of the list in Evansville. In Northwest Indiana, they have a major transformational project in terms of the South Shore Rail Line, double tracking, expansion of that, getting better access to Chicago. So all of those things related to quality of life and making these regions places that people want to live, work, and play, and to get more people here. And Rich, before I throw it back to you, just want to give you some examples of some of the deals, some of the economic development deals that we saw last year. Again, keep in mind, this was a pandemic year. One of the big players in economic development, Amazon, and we've seen them invest in a big way throughout the state of Indiana, here in central Indiana, but also a major new center proposed and actually being built now in South Bend, Elkhart, in that region, and also one in Fort Wayne. Each of those to employ more than 1,000 people at those respective locations. Now, Amazon, certainly one of the biggest employers in the state of Indiana. Very interesting, the auto industry. You know, you think, hey, the auto industry, it's going a different direction. The investment numbers aren't coming to the traditional industrial Midwest. Indiana is getting billions with a B in terms of investment. The biggest investment last year, and there were multiple of them, Toyota in Southwest Indiana, their Princeton plant, $860 million in investment plan. There are 1,400 new jobs. They are now up, I think, well over 6,000 employees. The size of that facility down there is about 14 football fields under roof. Very importantly in this Toyota announcement, part of it is for an electrified version of the Lexus. You're going to hear a lot more about electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles and how they play a role in the future. You know, people think they may or may not. It's going to happen. It is happening right now. And the automakers are investing big dollars here in Indiana to make that happen. The state of Indiana believes there's a real opportunity to cash in terms of investment in jobs in the electric vehicle revolution, if you will. Stellantis, which is the former Fiat Chrysler, in Kokomo, investing $230 million to retool the plants up there to make transmissions and components that would be compatible or that would be used in electric and hybrid vehicles. And that's really just the, I think the tip of the iceberg, if you will, because you look at the academic assets here. University of Notre Dame, Purdue University, world-class institutions that are focused on these technologies. There's also the Battery Innovation Center down at Crane Naval Surface Warfare Center in Southern Indiana. So there are a lot of things that were in place in that electric vehicle. Electric batteries, we saw Toyota announce $1 billion plus plant. Didn't come here, it went to North Carolina. But I think there are going to be more of those types of investments that Indiana is going to go after, Rich, I think in a big way.
I have like a dozen follow-up questions in that spurt there, but having me here at least gives you a chance to take a sip of whatever it is that you're drinking there.
Coffee.
And I'd like to get a case of it sometime later if it makes me perform like that. Hey, gang, we're gonna talk about a number of things here and get deeper into a number of these things. I want to let you know that I'm not the only one who gets to ask questions. Gerry, you're okay if the audience peppers you with some questions along the way. So I want to open up the chat board there, and I've got some Q&A moderators that will help sort through and triage those questions. And as they pop up, I will field them and pass them along to Gerry here. Gerry, why don't we kind of continue on by actually going back a little bit? What do you think the top stories of 2021 were? And then we'll move forward and talk about trends in and the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two things. I think one, well, I'll say three. Those record numbers from the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, to put those numbers on the board during a pandemic, I think says a lot about the state of the Indiana economy and how people outside of the state, businesses, executives, and others making decisions, how they view Indiana. So I think that's big. I think that population number is big as well. And another one, which I think is one of the interesting stories of the year, sports is such a big business for Indiana, in particular, central Indiana. Over 40 plus years, we've created this sports capital here, have hosted the biggest events, from a Super Bowl to Final Fours and on and on and on. 2021, Indianapolis in central Indiana pulled off what I think is an unbelievable feat, and that's hosting the entirety of March Madness. Wow. The entire 68 team tournament played in Indianapolis, and also had a few games at Purdue and at IU. Just unbelievable that Indianapolis was able to pull that off. The world was watching, and a lot of convention and meeting and sporting event planners were watching and saying to themselves, man, if they can do that, what can't they do? So that was a big impact. No fans there, of course, with COVID, but the impact, about $50 million. But then you go fast forward. This wasn't 2021, but close, with the College Football Playoff National Championship that was held here just a couple of weeks ago in downtown Indianapolis. Again, COVID, a lot of restrictions eased, but still a lot of COVID issues related there. Pulled off that event without a hitch. About $150 million in economic impact with that championship, hosting that championship. Rich, if you look at the three biggest events of the last decade that Indianapolis has hosted, number one, of course, was the Super Bowl in 2012. Yeah, economic impact about $175 million. College Football Playoff National Championship, $150 million. So right there. And then the 2016 Final Four, men's Final Four that was here. I think it was about $125 million in economic impact. But really importantly, Indianapolis's in particular performance in hosting March Madness and pulling off the College Football Playoff. The convention business here, which has been decimated by the pandemic, just hurt so badly, and so many workers, restaurants, hotels that have been impacted in such a very difficult way. Between the March Madness, the College Football Playoff, and a number of other events that have come here to Indianapolis, Visit Indy suggests that we are now at about 85% of a convention business pre-pandemic. So almost all the way back by the end of this year, by the end of 2022, the expectation is Indianapolis, from a convention standpoint, will be where we were before the pandemic. And that is a big, big accomplishment. with big impact. I want to say one more thing too about the economic impact, a little inside baseball here, but the College Football Playoff National Championship, there's that huge direct economic impact. There's also the media attention. It's ESPN's biggest broadcast of the year, shining the light and promoting Indianapolis, really positive. Yeah. Also, during that event, Visit Indy hosted 8 meeting and convention planners from around the country who flew into Indianapolis to be wined and dined and showed how Indianapolis hosts big events. Those 8 conventions represent more than $400 million in new business to Indianapolis. So almost $500 million in investment. If all those say yes, nearly $500 million in new business will come to Indianapolis as a result of that college football playoff. So a lot was riding on the game beyond the playing field.
Wow, staggering numbers. Yeah. And I have an opportunity here to talk to you as an insider here. I got an insider type question. So when people tout something like a Super Bowl coming in here could bring in, I think the number was $175 million. Yeah. Who does the addition of that and adds that up when it's all done?
Great question.
Or who's predicting it in the first place? We say this business comes in here and it's going to bring this much economic value. And it's like, what bean counter is doing this?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think it's a valid question too, because, sometimes you can get carried away with those things and these numbers. What do they mean? I mean, 175, is it 275? What is it?
Big.
So I think, and Indianapolis has been doing this long enough. So typically these communities, these cities and regions will hire whether it's accounting firms or sports consulting firms. So these are firms that have an equation or multiple equations probably to do this, where they look at, ticket sales, how much the average fan, how far away they come, how much they will spend for hotel rooms. There's kind of a formula for that they use, and some of them are more liberal than others in terms of numbers being maybe a little inflated. The Indiana Sports Corporation, and I thought the same thing, because I thought 175 for a Super Bowl was kind of low. They felt as though their numbers have been fairly conservative. But like I said, it's a great question. Communities certainly want to put a big number out there to show the value of hosting these events. So I guess that's all I can say is these are firms that are hired to do that, consulting firms, and a number of them around the country, and they have a lot more chance to work now, in large part because of Indianapolis. Another little interesting fact: Indianapolis, 1979, Indiana Sports Corporation was the very first local sports corporation to be formed in the entire United States. Very first one. A few years later, we hosted National Sports Festival in 1982, and on and on. And from there, from 1979, with one sports commission, Indiana Sports Corporation, to today, and I'm not sure what the number is, but it is in the hundreds. There are hundreds of local sports commissions. Now, big cities, Houston, San Antonio, you can go on down the list, that are competing for these events. So it's not like, hey, Indianapolis, we like you. We want you to host this event because we know you're good at it. There's some of that. But these cities and places are competing in a big way. And a little kind of breaking news from this week: there was a bill that was just introduced at the Indiana State House yesterday, I think, or maybe it was a week ago. Anyway, they want to create a sporting events and convention bid fund. So create a fund that would be, the idea, I guess, would be have some state funds in that would be matched by private sector funds to help cities like Indianapolis and other cities around the state go out and bid for these big events. The reason they have it, or the reason they're trying to get it, is because other regions around the country, Texas has a big bid fund. They combine Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and put big bucks in there. And in fact, I think it was a 2016, some swimming trials that Indianapolis had hoped to get, it went to Texas, in large part because they had that fund. So the competition for these events is so intense.
Well, and maybe with a little budget, that surplus, that's a place where some of that surplus could go as well. Hey, I don't have to ask this audience twice for questions. Since it turns out, I'm going to bring some up here. Let's go look at a different sector if you're okay to head this way for a little bit. So hit the Q&A button there. Hey, how are things looking for the biotech industry? And there's another companion question here is, hey, can you talk about the pharma industry? Believe it or not, we have some interest in the pharma industry here in Central Indiana.
I think Indiana is well positioned. If you look at, and we say biotech, one thing that comes to mind immediately is kind of the ag biotech, the ag bioscience sector that Indiana is becoming, has been for a long time, but is really becoming a big player in that ag bioscience space, with all the companies that are located here, from Elanco to Corteva, which is the old Dow AgriSciences on the northwest side of Indianapolis, Beck's seeds, used to be Beck's hybrids, Beck's seeds. So many of these companies that are located here, and then you look at Purdue and the number of academic assets. So there's a real feeling that that's an industry that I can't remember the number, valued in Indiana at about $8 billion, I think. There's a real focus on generating jobs in that area. Pharma, certainly led by Eli Lilly and Company. Really interesting. A surprise that started last year in Fishers, just of course northeast of Indianapolis, that Fishers is becoming kind of this life sciences mecca. Which, in talking with Mayor Scott Fadness there, he said this has been a total surprise to us. This has been kind of an IT focused strategy they have there, but a number of life sciences companies have decided to locate in Fishers. They bought some land. I think it's, if I remember right, it's east of Fishers, or on the east side of that area there. And I think it was 100 plus acres. It's already filled with commitments for life sciences companies.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that's an industry that, I think people in Indiana, maybe in Indianapolis, take it for granted because of all the jobs that are here. I think the number in terms of biopharmaceutical jobs, I think Indianapolis top 5. Maybe more, highest concentration in the country. So it's an important industry, and the efforts to grow jobs there are going to continue to be a real focus.
Fantastic. Good to hear that. I'm going to bring another question. Michael, thanks for the question there. Bring up another question here if I can find it. Had to do, you mentioned rail up in the northwest part of the states when you're talking about the READY grants earlier. And we have another question here about rail making a comeback and maybe an Amtrak station. And the broader question is, what's the infrastructure bill going to give us? So take it from there and rip for a while.
Great question, Leslie. I guess a couple things on that. I don't know that the Amtrak piece is going to happen. I'd like to see it happen. I really would. I think that would be cool. And I think there's some momentum that could be built around that. If you look at, and here's what for Indiana to be successful, the entire state has to be successful. So it's not just Indianapolis. I think that's one of our biggest challenges. Indianapolis has been doing well. They're doing very well to pretty well. I think we'll continue to do well going forward. But for Indiana as a state to be successful, Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana, South Bend, Evansville, Jeffersonville, Northwest has to be successful. And that hasn't been the case. Starting to see that change. A lot of activity in downtown Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. You talk about rail, there are 2 generational projects, transformational projects that have been talked about for decades, literally in Northwest Indiana, never gotten off the ground. They are happening now. And that's the South Shore Rail Line, and that's double tracking. So you have more tracks, and you can get traffic back and forth.
Freight and rail, freight and passenger competition, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And as well as an extension of the Westlake corridor of that. Those projects, and they each approach $1 billion, I believe. So they're massive. They're underway. And again, people thought they'd never see it in their lifetime. It's finally happening. Pete Visclosky, the former congressman there, and others played big roles in getting it to happen. But the impact to the region, you talk about quality of life. If you go up to Northwest Indiana now, and you look at Valpo and Dyer and Merrillville, and you name the community up there, they're all investing money in quality of life projects, Whiting along the lakefront there. They're investing money in housing, in trails, in lighting, in things to do. The focus is, or the thinking is, and it's beginning to happen because people are moving, is, okay, we're trying to get companies from Illinois to move here, but what about residents? What about people who work in downtown Chicago who don't want to live in Chicago or live there and pay the high taxes, the high cost of living, all the issues they have in Chicago? That South Shore project is going to cut the commute time immensely between Northwest Indiana and downtown Chicago.
Oh, that would be huge.
We've got these great communities, and they had a campaign up there called "The Grass is Greener" in Indiana. And there are people, there are numbers, I don't have them in front of me. There are numbers that show people are moving from Illinois. They're saying, you know what? We want to be where we can raise our family, we can enjoy quality of life and those types of things, still work at the job that we like in downtown Chicago and the South Shore. So from a rail standpoint, that's the biggest news really certainly in Indiana.
That's good to hear, because the talk has been forever. When it takes a former congressman, as long as they're usually in office, to get something done, it's a long time. Yeah, absolutely. Let's stay with transportation. So let's see. It's Joni has a question here. You talked about the future of electric cars, more business coming in, battery. I wasn't sure if it was manufacturing or research or whatever, but Joni's going, hey, when we have these electric cars and have all these batteries around, what are we doing about the safe disposal of such things?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for it, but it's one I'm writing down right now, because you're right, and that's a byproduct, a big issue of the whole electric and hybrid vehicle craze, if you will, or that movement to what is inevitably going to happen. So I don't have any information on that. I guarantee you there's an industry being spun up right now as we speak. And, to kind of dive off that just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about electric vehicles, that's part of a strategy that the state is really embarking on now that they're calling alternative energy. So it's the electric vehicles, batteries, all the components that go into electric and hybrid vehicles, but also solar, wind, all of these battery storage that is out there. And that is massive, massive business. Indiana, from the governor to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, feels the state has a real chance to be a player in that. Believe it or not, I believe it's called the Mammoth Wind Project. Indiana is home, or will be home, Northwest Indiana, to the largest solar project in the entire country. Northwest Indiana. They announced it several months ago. So that gives you an idea of how invested and how the investment is coming into Indiana from an alternative energy standpoint. So as you look at segments, the question was the biotech sector. That is strong, I think, going to get stronger. This whole wind, solar, electric vehicles, batteries, components, that's going to be a big focus as well. And when you look at workforce, and when you look at those who are parents who have kids who are, maybe in grade school coming up or in high school and looking for careers, those are some of the careers that are going to be, I think, increasingly available and pay some pretty decent wages in Indiana going forward.
Oh, that's excellent. And Anna's got a question right down the ballpark. I don't know how she knew you were going to talk about wages, Gerry, but here's the question. Let's talk. We've talked about jobs, which is just stunning results in the face of pandemic. And I'm going to come back and a follow up on that myself. But what do we have on the wage and what's going to go on with wage growth or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the bottom line is positive, but it needs to get better. So Indiana, for the last number of years, has really lagged when it comes to average wages, per capita income, putting money in our pockets from jobs. So as you look at those job commitments, the state will say, and those numbers are better. They need to get better still. I can't remember what the average number is, but that number is up fairly substantially from where it has been. When you're talking about the Amazon jobs, those are not the higher paying jobs, frankly. I mean, the 1,000 jobs, and for people maybe on their way up or different, those are opportunities that are out there, but they're not going to pay the higher wages. If you look at some of these sectors we talk about, biotech, the ag biosciences, pharma, those jobs, the Fisher's jobs I talked about, and those commitments, those are very good paying jobs. You look at the manufacturing jobs, and we call it advanced manufacturing now because it's more about technology and using your brains rather than brawn as in the old days. Those wages are not what they were many years ago. You think about what built Anderson and Marion and Kokomo and those communities. However, they are good jobs with benefits and good paying jobs with benefits and those types of things. So it really depends on the investment, on the job when it comes to that. But that's a metric, that average wage, that's a metric that the state is looking really hard at because it needs to improve. A lot of these technology jobs, and if you look at Indianapolis, I think it still holds true. At one point a year or two ago, Indianapolis was generating and producing tech jobs at a rate that was about 2.5 times the national average. It was getting into a competitive situation where tech companies were looking to steal people and that kind of thing. So that raises the wages. So those tech jobs are paying very good wages. And the other thing I'll throw out there is I think Indiana is getting to a situation where we're looking at education in a different way. It used to be that, you look at a 4-year education, and it is incredible, the 4-year institutions in Indiana, which is a big attracting point for business here. State universities, private universities, unbelievable assets that are here. In fact, a guy from Salesforce who's been all over the world said there's not a better pipeline potentially anywhere than right here from these universities. But I think for the first time, people are beginning to realize 4-year institutions, awesome, but it's not necessarily for everybody. These 2-year institutions from Ivy Tech to Vincennes to you can name a number of them, and they're really focused on getting kids in high school, some kids who may not go into higher education right away, into the workforce. And these are getting young people on a career path that is going to earn them over time wages that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So there's a whole dynamic with the workforce that's happening that I think is positive from an education standpoint.
I want to hang with jobs for just a second. I think you mentioned, and maybe it was in your promotional video, have we set some record in the state regarding jobs growth?
Yeah, and from a growth standpoint, we're continuing on that path. In terms of job commitments, we hit that. You know, the governor had a job growth number, and we need to double check it because I think he might have misspoke in the state of the state. I'm not sure, but based on the trends and where things are going, those numbers are going in the right direction for sure.
Okay. I had another one of those, how do we know these things question about jobs growth, because if it's based on like year to year, yeah, it's like, well, we lost some jobs with the pandemic somewhere along
Absolutely.
the way. Did we really gain, or did we gain stuff that we lost?
And the net, absolutely. Yeah, great question. And certainly the pandemic. And you know, what will be interesting too, another dynamic from jobs and people moving to Indiana, there's a real push. Other states are doing it too, but there's a real push to get these remote workers. And you know, you work in California for Microsoft or Apple. So many of those jobs you can work from anywhere and do the job. So Indiana has been looking at incentives to attract those workers, to say, hey, move here. You can still work at Microsoft, but you live in Indianapolis or you live in Bloomington or West Lafayette. And other states are doing it as well, but the state chamber is a big proponent of offering incentives to get people here and again, get that talent here. And that's, again, one of the big focus areas of the state and economic development is talent at the end of the day, because these companies that are investing here, they're not going to stay here and they're not going to continue to invest here unless there's that pipeline of talent, of educated talent, be it the 4-year PhD advanced degree, but also the 2-year associate degree, those stackable certifications that are out there. So that's why there's so much focus, and rightfully so, on education and workforce.
Yeah, as well. And one could see how those ready grants for quality of life become very important too, because they become reinforcing mechanisms for that talent that we want to retain
question.
or draw.
Yeah, you're going to go to where you feel you can raise your family, you can enjoy your life, have a good job, and all those types of things. And that's the real focus of these grants. And they're going to re-up them in some manner to continue to do that, because they feel, and there's actually proof, that these investments, $50 million, will generate exponentially more in terms of private investment into those communities. So the private sector comes in and say, hey, we'll put in, or investors say, we'll put in 10 million for this project, 20 million, whatever the case might be. So there's a real positive thing there. The other thing I mentioned in terms of investment, because Indiana has been a laggard when it comes to venture capital, the money coming into the state, to fund these, fuel these great ideas. And increasingly there are really good ideas, startup companies that are percolating here. We're not Silicon Valley, and we're not going to be, but we are headed on a rocket ship in the right direction. Last year, record number in terms of venture capital in Indiana, tech investment in Indiana. So that's a positive sign. And again, Indiana, these quote unquote flyover states that people are really beginning to take a second look at now, especially in high tax states in other parts of the country, and looking at quality of life, the talent at tech companies, the management, the leadership, all that kind of stuff. So keep an eye on the venture capital number as well.
Wasn't the fourth quarter, if I listen to our own promotional video, $1 billion in the fourth quarter, which is like 3 times any quarter beat. What's going on there? What's the insights? Yeah, what's going on?
Well, I think it's a byproduct of a lot of work. I mean, it was 20 plus years ago, that here in Indianapolis, Mayor Steve Goldsmith, they started this thing called the High Tech Task Force. And basically they're saying, you know what, we got to do something to jumpstart our economy here. And they had a group that went to all kinds of tech regions around the country: Denver, Silicon Valley, Austin, Boston, I say Denver, Pittsburgh, all these regions, and say, hey, what did you do to become a recognized tech region? And got this input. They also got data on Indiana and Indianapolis. What do you think of Indiana? And the responses weren't negative. They didn't have an opinion. It was like,
wow, yeah,
that's and
that's not good though.
Yeah. And that started things, and they came up with goals: connectivity, direct, nonstop flights. You remember, it used to be, hey, there weren't hardly any nonstop flights from whether it's the West Coast to here or wherever the case might be. Yep, and these venture capitalists, they didn't even look at Indiana, because they said, it takes me a day plus to get there, a day plus to get back. I got plenty of deals elsewhere. So if you fast forward 20 years later, you look at a record number of 40 plus nonstop flights to some great markets like LA and in San Francisco and in Austin and Boston. So very positive. The venture capital thing, which was almost non-existent 20 years ago, just a dribble, that's on an upward trend. So I think it's the byproduct of 20 years of efforts. Universities, I'm telling you, they're doing some great things in universities. The big universities, be it University of Notre Dame, is engaged as never before. They've got the Idea Center up there, which is producing startups. IU, Purdue, amazing efforts. UIndy here in Indianapolis, but everyone's getting involved in this entrepreneurship innovation game, and the byproducts in these co-working spaces. It's all kind of adding up to momentum, I think, that's beginning to pay off.
Good news. It seems like a lot of good news. We haven't really put the moose on the table, though.
Yeah.
So let's talk. We've mentioned it, but COVID. What's it doing to us, and what's it going to do to us in the future? What do you see? As far as trends with go, just go.
Yeah, it's a great question. Everybody is wondering about it. A couple of things. One, I think a lot of people say, hey, does this change the way we work? And it's the pendulum. People at one point, people were saying no one is ever going back to the office. It's going to be 100% remote work, going forward. Well, that's not the case. It will change business travel, I think. And if you talk to Mario Rodriguez out at the Indianapolis International Airport, he said, without question, and that's going to impact the airlines. He thinks all of the kind of legacy carriers, United, American, Delta, the big ones, he thinks they'll all be in bankruptcy at some point before long, because their business models are being broken apart. They make their money on business travel. That's changed. It's not going to end. But he said, what this has done, he said this was going to happen anyway. Business travel was going to change to this partially remote model. This just moved it up maybe 5 years. So, I think you see a change in business travel, how we work. There's going to be more of the hybrid, in the office, at home, whatever the case might be there. I think that changes for sure. I think businesses here in Indiana, now if you go, some of the, New York, LA, some of these other places, much different game. But I think businesses and others here have come to realization that COVID is going to be with us in some form.
I wondered, is that where you are too?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no return to normal as we
or it'll be, and I don't say normal, but it'll just be, it's the way it is, and we're going to take
a new normal,
whatever precautions you need, the vaccinations, whatever the case might be. And there's a bill at the State House on mandating companies, mandating employees to get the vaccination. That's kind of working through now. But I think Indiana companies have said, look, we've got to get on with our business, our life, and they're kind of moving forward. And I think the Indiana economy is beginning to chug along in a good way. And you look at that budget surplus as a positive for the state. So, you don't know what's next. There are times we thought the pandemic was over. Well, and it comes back with these variants. So a lot of uncertainty around that. But I think increasingly there's some confidence, I think, in Indiana, at least, that we're going to get our arms around this and learn how to deal with it and move forward.
Great, thank you. I'm keeping my eye on the clock here, and we're at time for you, Gerry. Hang on just a second here. I want to first thank people, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to all the questions we had from our audience members. Gary, is there a place for them to send questions, perchance?
Sure. Yeah. You can give my email. Do you have my email?
Yes, I'm sure some of my associates here will have the email, and we'll throw it into the chat. Thank you very much for doing that. So keep an eye on the chat. If you have a
Yeah.
burning question for Gary, he is really, Gary, thank you so much for being so gracious as to go ahead and accept those. We could talk this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And yet we don't have a long, long time in today's session. We have some other business to get to. Again, pun intended here. Gary, I want to thank you very much. A couple of things
Sure.
I want to share here before you get away. People get credit for this. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Remind everybody about the survey going forward as well. And there's your PDU code, so they get credit for viewing you. And Gary, we like to show some appreciation with a gesture to speakers that are so kind as yourself to be able to share that with us. And I was, like I said, I was internet stalking you to prepare for this, and I saw somebody ask you a question about, given a choice, would you ride a horse, ride a bicycle, or drive a car? And your choice was ride a bicycle. And so in preparation of I got you these. If we were in person on the stage, these are wonderful cycling trunks with a beautiful pad that's in there.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, I can't stick this into the computer to send to you. I am glad that you didn't choose. I mean, I'm glad you didn't choose ride a horse, because I wouldn't know what to do.
You got me a saddle, I guess, right?
Right. What we do have for you that does fit an email is this wonderful certificate of appreciation signed by a couple of our chief officers of the chapter. So
very good.
So sincerely, Gary, thank you. Thanks for showing.
Hey, I'll make sure I get I'll get a picture here.
If you do that,
get you on social media. Yeah.
I'm putting the bike shorts back up too.
I got it.
You do with what you may, sir. I bow to your graciousness, your expertise, your professionalism. I'll never ever say Inside Indiana Business without saying or thinking with Gerry Dick.
Well, I appreciate that, Rich, and it was a real treat to have a conversation with you and the way you performed there tonight. And again, really a treat to be with you all tonight.
That's super. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll let you go on with your evening here as we turn our attention to some other stuff, gang, that I mentioned. Thank you, Gary, and see you later someday.
Yeah.
All righty. Listen up, everyone. Couple of things. Listen up in the audience. Want your attention. Okay. If you're a regular of this event, you know that now is usually the time for the voluntary mini podcast or the chapter networking activity. But it turns out it's that time of the year for the annual chapter business meeting. Oh, the annual chapter business meeting is coming right up. Now, if you are not a member of the chapter, wait, don't go. If you're not a member of this PMI chapter, okay, I'd like to make a special point of inviting you to hang around for 15 minutes. Hang around for 15 minutes for a unique opportunity to hear about what this chapter does through the year. It's a great investment. You won't get a better download more efficiently anywhere. If you are a chapter member, now, I'd like to make a special point of inviting you to listen in for the next 15 minutes for a unique opportunity to hear about the state of your chapter. All righty. Okay, I think that includes everybody that I've reached out to here. So I hope everybody is kind of hanging around for 15 minutes or so. And now I shall turn you over to the Central Indiana Chapter Board of Directors, beginning with Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, there she is, Erica Perley. Hi, Erica.
Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me?
Sound great.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone, and welcome again. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's programming with Gerry Dick. So many things to look forward to this year in Indiana business. Obviously, we are pleased to have you joining us now for this second half of the program, where we're going to give you these brief insights on how our chapter has been doing this past year and what are some things to look forward to here in 2022. So before we get started, though, I want to say thank you to all of the fellow volunteers and board members who have helped over this past year and who are continually giving of their time and talent to support this organization. Casey Adams and I are going to continue with our second year as elected president and executive vice president, respectively. Kelly Sandstrom is going to continue with her second year as appointed VP of Communications. And I also want to say congratulations again to our newly elected board member, Gay Hill, who's our VP of Professional Development. She'll be serving in this 2-year term, continuing her leadership of the professional development operations, including this third Wednesday programming and Pro Dev Day. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the recap of operations here for 2021. So starting first with a look at our annual goals. We started off focusing on 2 main primary areas, and that was the area of volunteers and membership, volunteer recruitment specifically, looking to increase our pool of volunteers to about 50 volunteers. At the end of the year, we actually ended up with about 33 active volunteers, which was about 66% of our goal. However, there wasn't any real data as to why we chose that number 50. So in reality, when we look back at the success that we've had and what we've been able to deliver this past year, I'm going to say that we actually met the requirements of what was needed to deliver. So I would still say we were successful in achieving what was needed in volunteer recruiting. That being said, we did want to try and coordinate the volunteers and kind of really give them focus areas and looking to have at least 4 Tier 1 committees of our volunteers, and that's focusing on the areas of programming, volunteer, membership operations, and communications. And we were able to achieve 3 of those 4 and are still seeking assistance with our membership operations. So please, if you're interested in helping us in that area, definitely let us know, sign up to be a volunteer or reach out just to find out a little bit more about what's needed. We did have a 4th committee with social good, which I do want to point out through the influence of PMI changing midway through what the focus was for our social good, focusing both on not only community outreach, but academic outreach. We were able to support our membership and our community. This past year, we really focused on reconnecting with the not-for-profit Wheeler Dow Boys and Girls Club. And so our chapter was able to raise over $1,000. I think it was like $1,300 or $300+ in donations to assist in supporting the club's summer pool program. So I'm going to call that a success with our committees. And we are looking to add a few more here this year in 2022. With membership recruiting specifically, we wanted a 15% increase of new members by the end of the year. And we had a total of about 1,200 members. With that, about 9% were actual new members. So our real success story was in retention of our current members. We wanted to originally have a goal of increasing our membership retention from 72%, which is what we were at the beginning of the year, to 75%, again, over a 12-month rolling basis. And that was a pretty lofty goal, considering we were still trying to recruit volunteers to help us with our operations. But there was also a lot of significant loss in 2020, not only with the chapter, but also PMI globally. Clearly, the 2020 pandemic had an impact, but there were other technical struggles that we had. But at the end of the year, knowing that our year was tough, but this past year, we were able to really give this a focus, and we actually exceeded this goal. So we ended up the year with 81% retention of our members. So that was fantastic. I'm looking to achieve that again this year, or to maintain that as we move forward. Looking at finances, I'm not going to touch too much on specific numbers. I know we're kind of losing some people. It's kind of late here. I'm not going to get into financial tables or anything, but I just wanted you to know again how we performed over this past year financially. Starting off, we wanted to kind of keep things safe, looking at continuing our programming virtually, looking at trying to provide low-cost solutions and actually try to cut costs, standing costs that we had that really weren't serving our needs. So we were actually able to kind of meet all costs for the year with just our revenue coming in from membership dues. That also allowed us to achieve a little bit of a reserve going into 2022. So we are currently sitting at a budget that's going to cover about half of our standard expenses. If we were to do nothing more than what we've already been doing, we'd be able to cover our cost. But we are looking at a couple of new things this year. So with that, we are looking to not only increase cost by delivering new services and new opportunities, but also bring in new sources of revenue. And so there are different things that we have on the table, a lot of opportunity for volunteers to help us with this, provide influence on how we deliver services moving forward. So please, again, consider volunteering or even just sharing your thoughts, completing surveys, reaching out to the board or anyone else who's involved with the chapter. So looking at goals for 2022, continuing to focus again on volunteers and membership. I'm going to tell you right now, our first focus in Q1 is going to be on volunteer recruiting efforts, making sure that we're publishing and promoting volunteer opportunities more frequently and in more places. So just wanting to make sure that you have a specific focused need identified. If you are interested in getting involved, you know exactly what we're looking for. If you have experience in this in the past, or you just want to provide your input, please, again, give it some thought. Or if you're just a general volunteer, you want to see what it's about, we could always use more utility players of people willing to kind of bounce around and fulfill a need. We're looking for that as well. Regarding membership, we are looking at different opportunities for membership growth and just looking at new markets that we can kind of reach out to. Again, expanding our reach into different subgroups is one area that we're looking at, different industry-focused subgroups, things like construction or focuses on government, healthcare, higher education, women in technology, military, all sorts of different industry focuses that could be, potential for PDU meetings, opportunities for giving presentations in those specific industry focuses, all sorts of, again, membership benefit if you're looking to get into those industries. Again, opportunities for mentorship and just career development and professional development in general. So that's kind of what we have looking forward into 2022. Again, if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Going on into, again, looking at who volunteers, just wanting to make sure that you guys are aware, again, all of our operations are 100% volunteer-led. So what you're looking at is a group of volunteers who just have a passion for our profession. We're seeking others like us who can help us in delivering, successful programs, successful services, and really just learning from one another. So definitely consider volunteering. There's opportunities, again, for discounts for various events that will have a cost this year. We do, again, have those standing committees that I mentioned, volunteer operations committees, communications, professional development, social good, as well as looking at adding the membership committee. There are different activities where you can get involved. This could be a weekly commitment, a monthly commitment, or just once a year annual commitment. Again, a lot of different opportunities for you to join. We are going to continue our monthly third Wednesday evening programming and just, again, different things happening that we have already been providing. We are, again, a chartered member of PMI Global, so we'll be following along with them closely to see if new things that'll be available to our members, and then also looking at opportunities to collaborate within our region across the Midwest. So again, specific needs that we have for volunteers, we are taking applications for consideration for appointment to the Vice President of Finance, Vice President of Membership, as well as opportunities for volunteers looking into these subgroups, as I mentioned, and I definitely could welcome a director of volunteers for our onboarding needs. So again, our individual and professional membership rates, if you are not a member yet, currently the membership rate is $35 in addition to your PMI membership. If you are a student member, it's an additional $15. There is opportunity for consideration right now if we want to add any additional segments. This could be group rates, mid-year, or multi-year rates, etc. But again, if those are things that are interested to you, please come forward to the board. Let's talk about it. Let's put a plan and bring that benefit to our members this year. I do also want to mention we do have quarterly leadership workshop meetings. Again, this is opportunity for leadership training or just learning a little bit more about how we run this organization. Our first meeting is going to be in February. I believe it's February 27th. So if you're interested, please let us know. And then again, we're continuing our charter membership for the 34th year and our incorporated organization for 21 years. So that's all that I have for you is just kind of a general overview. I'm going to turn things over now to our VP of Communications to let us know a little bit more about what we have in store there. Kelly?
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everyone. If we haven't had the chance to meet, my name is Kelly Sandstrom, and I'm proud to be the chapter vice president of communications. I know we're running a little short on time, so you're going to get the quick update from me tonight so that you can also hear from the rest of my fellow board members. But I wanted to take an opportunity just to share with you some of the accomplishments that me and my committee have made this year on the communications front. I'm not going to read all of these, feel free to browse them, but wanted to touch on a couple of things. If you are a new member to our chapter or have renewed your membership in the last year, you likely have received an email from our chapter. That was something that we put in place earlier, kind of at the beginning of this year, for an increased focus on key member communications. So hopefully you've been receiving communications from the chapter, and just know that that's something that we've put in place to kind of build on the existing communications that the chapter had built in some of the previous foundational years. We also had an increased investment in social media this year. I don't know, you all follow our social media pages. I'll come back to that in a few moments, but social media is a great way for us to connect with you all in our community currently, and also a way for us to do some outreach to folks who may not know that we exist. So if you've seen us on social media, you've probably noticed that we are doing a lot more targeted messaging, a lot more focused messaging on certain things. We work with an amazing partner, and I'm so excited to continue working with them in 2022. And our other win from 2021 was the introduction of the PMI Partner Affiliate Program. So this was a way for us to help bring some of PMI's 4.0 strategy to you, our local chapter members. So if you go to our website, PMICIC.org, we now have a brand new page dedicated to all of the offerings that we can bring you from PMI. Please go there and check it out if you haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of awesome things to learn about and to consider for 2022. Looking ahead to 2022, I'm very, very excited to share that we are refreshing our website, PMICIC.org. It's been a long time coming, and give us a couple of days to check back and you should see our new website out there. It looks great. I can't wait to share it with everybody. I think that you will all enjoy the refresh of the website. We're also going to have the opportunity to have a new member login area and an integration with PMI directly. So that's really exciting for us. Just a couple other reminders on the communications front. We do communicate via email 3 times a month. So if you are not receiving any communications from us, reach out anytime. We'll make sure and confirm that you're on our email list. We also, as I mentioned, have a presence on 3 of the major social media channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So please out and follow us there if you don't already. And our main chapter email is info@pmicic.org. If you ever have any questions, want to connect with the chapter, please use that as a resource to connect with us, your board of directors. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't call out some of the current needs that we have in the communications front. We are looking for someone to kind of own social media for us going forward. So if that's an interest you have, we do have an open director of social media position available. And then we certainly can always use committee members on the communications committee to support a number of things. This monthly program that you're participating in right now. Also website maintenance with our new website, and then any chapter initiatives that we might want to take on going forward. There's always new things that we're looking at that we need extra support with. For example, we're looking at potentially starting a job board in 2022, and we will need volunteers and support for some of these new initiatives. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to pass it off to my fellow board member, Galen Hill, to talk about professional development.
Thank you very much for attending this evening. Thank you very much for all of your votes in the fall and electing me into this position for the next 2 years. To get started, I just want to kind of recap last year. We really had an exciting year last year. For one, our attendance for our monthly programs was right around 100, give or take some of the programs. And so that was phenomenal. So if we're taking a look at what we did last year, we kicked off with our annual business meeting with Juan Gonzalez. And then John Colby taught us how we can improve our communications through improv. We had Tom Dackage and Jesse Fewell to cover private partnerships and the Pinbox 7th edition. Christopher Steiner, great topic on portfolio, which had been the first we had done. Steve Salisbury took us through growth through culture. Steve Staggy, meet the customer journey through your lead funnel. We introduced the Discipline Agile with Beth. We also introduced PMI's Pro Micro Credential with Samantha Mulford. In September, we, for the first time, partnered up with 2 other chapters and had a phenomenal PDD day. We look to do that again this year. We had John Stenbeck take us through analysis paralysis, trying to get our leadership on board with making decisions quicker. And we ended our year with Joe McGinnis in INDOT and how they do some of their project management. So a very exciting, fascinating year that we had last year with our topics. What we look forward to in 2020 is a plan to get back to in-person events. We know that you have been looking for this, and while we want to respect everybody in how COVID is going, we really do want to get back to this in-person event. Now, we are still going to maintain a virtual presence so that you can have the best of both worlds. If you can't get up to wherever our program is being held live, then you can still log on and get the benefits from that. We're going to have, like I said before, we're going to do another shared chapter PDD this year. And what that allows us to do is really kind of give you a lot more. It opens up the opportunities that we can bring to you for PDD Day. Let me just click down to the next one. Oops. So sorry. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So for infos and reminders, we have decided to give you guys all of the videos that we did last year in 2021, and you can find them with that particular link that we have right here on the slide. Please save the date for PDD. We're going to have it September 15th and 16th. I hope you will be as excited for our PDD Day as we are. And of course, our needs are, both leadership roles and just support roles for the program and for PDD. And of course, if you guys have speakers that you have attended, you absolutely love, you would like to see our chapter, bring them. Do reach out to us. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what kind of topics that you are looking for. Because we really do appreciate all of your input on a month-to-month basis, on a yearly basis. We really look forward to serving you this next year. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our president, Casey Adams.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We'll make this a nice, short and sweet wrap up for a great evening. I want to talk about our people and the wonderful work that they've done this year. You heard from the other 3 about it. And honestly, none of this would happen if we didn't have the group of people that we do making that sacrifice of their time to do this. So this past year presented an opportunity as we transitioned into this new board of officers. Collectively, most of us had only really been even a volunteer for a couple of years before joining the board. Erica being the exception. She'd been a 2-year member of the board and plus a handful of years prior to that in various capacities. So with us being so new and fresh to the group, we really took advantage of that and said, it's a good opportunity to reset ourselves as a group and really decide what we wanted to do with the chapter and as a group of leaders. So I really hope that the volunteer experience has been improving. It's been a focus of ours. I'm going to come back to a little bit of that in just a minute. One of the things that you heard before is the PMI 4.0 strategy. This has been developed and rolled out by our global entity of Project Management Institute. And as it says here, it's a growth strategy that they've come up with, recognizing that the project skill set, project management professional skill set, is one that is utilized and beneficial in all sorts of roles, whether they're called project manager or project anything. So they want to take that and blend it in with the other skills that are coming in that are utilizing the project management skill set. So it says right there, a new audience of global change makers. Every project brings change, and PMI is taking advantage of that and really trying to pull that together. One of the great benefits of being a volunteer is the Leadership Institute meetings. These are held regionally, North America, and globally. Of course, for the past year plus, they've all been virtual. In the past, before that, and hopefully in the future soon, at least the regional in North America would be in person. It's a great time to really skill up in leadership development and a focus on running the chapter and really getting those business management skills in place. So as a good friend of mine just informed me recently in a conversation, running the chapter is almost as good as going through an MBA program. So for me, I've loved having access to these programs in particular to really help my own abilities grow. One of the things that we focused on as a group of leaders is a set of value statements focused on the volunteer experience. And so we came up with inclusive community, servant leadership, and continuous improvement. I'm going to say a little bit more about those here very soon. Next slide. I'm also going to say we came up with a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And when you see that, you'll understand that was just something that made sense to do. We already were doing this. We wanted to highlight it and really just put words and language around it. So what's next this year? Well, we're going to keep continuing to improve the volunteer experience. We want this to be an experience that people see and hear about, and they're attracted to it. So naturally, we get the people who are ready to make that sacrifice of time and that it's worth it to them to do that, just like it is for those of us who are doing it right now. And of course, more Leadership Institute meetings are coming ahead. There is talk right now of trying to do the North America one down in Florida. We'll see how that goes. So what's my info? Well, our inclusive community statement is we build an inclusive community for our members and volunteers by respecting diversity of thought and embracing individual journeys. We seek to serve others first by building trust in order to inspire creativity through open communication and supporting growth opportunities. That's our servant leadership. For continuous improvement, we experiment with new ideas, embrace failure as opportunities, and take action on our feedback and learnings. All of this, we hope, will attract more leaders and problem solvers to our group. These are ambitions. Will we ever achieve these as goals? Hard to say. It's an ambition. It's the way we're going to show up and commit to show up for each other, with each other every single day. And I can say, I really enjoy the time I spend working with the fellow board and the leaders and then in the director positions. Every time we meet, it's not just a meeting, it's more of a workshop. You know, it's a working session where we're trying to figure something out that needs to get done. So I really appreciate that aspect. We are trying to come up with a chapter vision statement. It's one of those things that's coming really close into focus. We just don't quite have it yet. So hopefully we'll have that done this year. The DEI statement is pretty simple and honestly, just makes sense. PMICIC understands it's our responsibility to build, advocate, and advance local diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is the center of what we do. Recognizing we are members of a global project management community, we strive to ensure belonging, respect, and appreciation. As a professional growth organization, we commit to learning and relearning how to contribute to creating a more just society and advancing PMI's global purpose. I put this statement in needs because we need to develop some actions for this. We need to get some programming around this. We just don't have that yet. So if you've got some ideas, please let us know. We would really like to put some actions behind these words. The last thing I want to leave you with are a couple of quotes that are favorites to me from a book. James P. Carr's Finite and Infinite Games. If anybody's a Simon Sinek fan, this is the book he mentions as the great inspiration for a lot of what he does. James P. Carr writes, "Only that which can change can continue." And I really believe PMI is really embracing that and putting that out there. The other thing is culture can have no temporal limits. A culture understands its past not as destiny, but as history. That is, as a narrative that has begun, but points always toward the endlessly open. And that's where we exist. So with that, I will say thank you once again. And Rich, will you please close this out for us?
Hey, Board of Directors, on behalf of the membership of this chapter, we thank you for your volunteer service, the many hours of dedicated service that you provide, doing the types of things and organizing the type of things you guys just covered. And just thanks a lot, because it really helps this organization aspire to great things. Hey, gang, everybody out there, thank you very much for hanging around. I hope you gained some great insight from there. 15 minutes went a little bit longer in my clock than others, but it was still great. Happy to have you hang around. Let's see, if you're looking for that PDU code, some of you still were. Here's the PDU number code that you need. And you can see here, get it on the calendar for the day before St. Patrick's Day. Last year it was on St. Patrick's Day. This time we're the perfect prelude to your St. Patrick's Day. Right? What a way to gear up for St. Patrick's Day, but to attend the February event. Look for that in an email near you. Thanks a lot, guys, for hanging around, for being here. Good night.